Torment is another in the Digitalworld.local series. It's an intentionally vulnerable Linux machine. We're going to be enumerating and exploiting this VM. Double-click the OVF file, and I'm just going to be naming this Digitalworld.local Torment. Click Import. Now we'll just make sure that the network settings are correct. So just right-click, click Settings, go to the Network tab, and it is not correct. So we want to change that to Host Only. Click OK, and click Start. Once that's done booting up, we can move over to our Kali Linux box. Same as all the others, we're going to find the IP address with netdiscover. So terminal netdiscover -i eth1. Wait till that runs. While I'm waiting for this command to run, I noticed right away when I booted up the machine that there's two users here. We have QUI and Patrick. So let's remember that and move on to enumeration once we get the IP addresses. Looks like it should be finishing up soon. Now that we have the IP address, let's do our Nmap scan. Same as before. There's a large attack surface here. We have port 21 running FTP, and I see that it allows anonymous login, and it just gave us a listing of the directory. We have port 22 running SSH. We have port 80 running HTTP. 445 running Samba. 667 running IRC. This could all be interesting. But I see right away that we have access to FTP, so let's go that route. I'm just going to create another tab here. Just FTP into that IP address. Anonymous, hit enter. All right. So I see shadow.back. So that could be the backup of Etsy Shadow, which would have some password hashes. So let's try to get that. All right, failed to open file. Consider using passive. So I'm just going to switch to passive by typing passive. Try that again. Failed to open file. Okay, we probably don't have permissions to open that file. But I do see .ssh up there. So let's go to .ssh because right now I'm interested in something that'll let me gain access to at this point. And SSH is the way to do that if we can get like a private key or something like that. So let's take a look. All right, I see a private key there. So I'm going to try to get that. Get ID _RSA. Good. We got that private key. Let's quit for now and see if we can use that. First, we need to change the permissions of this private key. So chmod 600 and ID _RSA. There we go. Let's try to SSH as Patrick. So SSH Patrick at and the IP address of Torment. Yes when prompted. Okay. Just seeing if we could get in with password, and no, we cannot. So -i ID _RSA. We're going to try to use the private key to log in as Patrick. All right, so we need to enter a passphrase in conjunction with the private key. We do not know what the passphrase is. I'm just going to type in Patrick. Nope. Don't know it yet. Let's just try to enumerate further into FTP, see if we can get anything else that'll give us some clues as to what the password would be. Log back into FTP. Do an anonymous login, so anonymous, hit enter. All right. ls-lah. We're going to look at everything that's even hidden. All right, so I want to look at the IRC directory. All right, so I see a file named channels. I want to see what that's it. about. Just, okay. Good, we got it. So I'm just going to quit and take a look at that file that we just downloaded. What we have here is a file that contains a list of 2 channels for IRC. We also know that IRC is running on port 6667. So let's download, install, and load up HexChat, which is an IRC client, and try to access it. If you're using the Kali Linux VM that comes with the course, you will not need to do this because it'll already be installed. So apt-get update and then apt-get install HexChat. Just going to type in HexChat. All right. Now we're going to click Add. I'm going to name it Torment. And we're going to now click Edit and change this new server into the IP address of Torment. Click off of it so it commits. Click Close. And we are now going to click Connect. All right. Access denied, bad password. So we're going to need to know the password for this IRC server. We know that the specific service that's running is NGIRCD, which is Next Generation IRC Daemon. So let's just go to Google and see if there are any publicly known default passwords for this service. So open up your web browser. And I'm just going to type in Next Generation IRC Daemon default password. Okay, I don't like this. I'm just going to go back here and change my search to NGRCD password. Okay, here we go. We got a password here. Well, I can see it right here. We all like Debian. Some reason it wasn't letting us in there. All right, so I'm just going to copy that. Go back here to HexChat. We're going to try to configure it with a password this time. So edit, and I'm just going to paste that password. We all like Debian. And click close. Just make sure, yeah, it's still there. All right, now let's try to click connect again. All right. So we successfully connected. As we know from our previous enumeration, we have 2 channels, games and tormented printer. I'm just going to, let's see, open the channels list. That's interesting. Well, I'm just going to go back to join a channel, and we're going to try to join games. Okay. Nothing really interesting here. Just go back here to join a channel. Tormented printer. Okay, take a look at this text here. All right, so in the topic, it gives us a password. And it looks like the password to their printer. So let's just copy that and check that out. I went back to the nmet output so I could show you real quick the printer, which is running on 631. It's running CUPS, which is Common Unix Printing System. So let's load up a web browser and try to hit the printer service over port 631. All right, just open that web browser up. HTTP and the IP address of Torment with port 631. There we go. Here's the default documentation. We don't want to see that. I see administration. We have a configuration file here. Take a look at that. Nothing particularly interesting there. Manage printers. All right. So I see under the queue name area, we have a bunch of names. And I recognize Patrick and this name here. So this could be useful for us if we need to brute force some users. Let's remember those usernames. So copy those down. So I'm just going to copy all this real quick. Just going to make a new tab here. I'm just going to make a file named usernames. Copy all that in there. Now I'm just going to use some basic awk and sed commands to remove the unwanted text. So you got cat usernames, pipe it to awk, print the first column here, pipe that to sed. We're going to remove the following text to give us a nice, neat output. See that? I'm just going to redirect that to a new file, usernames 2. There we go. We can use that for later. All right, so I know SMTP is running, so I'm going to try to leverage this word list to try to enumerate legitimate users in SMTP. For this, a handy Metasploit auxiliary module can be used. I'm just going to type in MSF console. We're going to type in use auxiliary /scanner /SMTP /SMTP _enum. I'm going to set the R hosts to the IP address of Torment. Set the user _file to the usernames2 file that we used or that we created earlier. Now run that. All right, so what we've enumerated is the 2 users that we already knew about from the login page. Nothing new gained here, but at least it shows how to enumerate SMTP for the future. So let's just go ahead and exit out of Metasploit for now, and we are going to try to SSH into Patrick using that password that we found in IRC earlier to see if it will work in conjunction with our private key. So just go ahead and copy that password. Here it is, that long password there. And I'm going to SSH into Patrick, IP address of Torment, and the ID _RSA private key file. So I'm just pasting that long password in there. Very good, we're in. All right, let's see if we have any sudo permissions. See a couple here. We have power off, halt, reboot, systemctl. All right, let's keep those in mind. Try to enumerate some configuration files. Let me see. So there's a find command. I'm just going to start in the etc directory with the max depth of 1, searching for files with the .conf extension. So right here, 2 standard error. It's going to be redirected to dev null, which is null device, so we don't see the errors for a nice clean output. All right, so pretty exhaustive list. There's a bunch, so I want to narrow it down to world writable files. For that, I can use the perm command. Just going to change the max depth to 2, and the perm command of 2 is going to only show the world writable files. That means that we can write to them, basically. All right, so what we can do with this apache2.conf file is modify it to be executed with the permissions of a particular user. So assuming that this service starts at boot up, we can force this execution with reboot, which we have sudo access to with our current user, Patrick, as demonstrated earlier. Also, we're going to want to set up a PHP reverse shell in order to acquire access with these new privileges. Note that I tried this with the root user behind the scenes, and it resulted in Apache not working on Torment. So we're just going to open up the file in a text editor. I'm using V, and I'm going to go down to vars. Just press N to go to the next one. This is where we want to be. So in this line, all we have to do is type in user space QIU group space QIU. And I'm just going to save that. All right, let's just switch over to another tab to go to our local Kali box. And what I'm going to do here is copy a PHP reverse shell that's built into Kali over to our web root. All right, and we're going to want to change a couple of the lines here because we need to specify our IP address. So my Kali IP address is under ETH1. Yours should be as well. I'm just going to copy that real quick. And I'm going to open up that revshell.php file. Go down a little bit. And here is where we need to change the IP variable. I'm just going to change that to the correct IP address for my Kali Linux VM. And I'm going to change the port. We don't have to, but I'm just going to do it anyway, to 4448. Save that. Now I'm just going to change over to the var www.html folder. This is where we put our revshell.php file. And I'm going to set up a simple HTTP server. So python-m simple HTTP server. That's the module we're using. I'm just going to use port 9999. Show you a different way to serve up a file. So we're going to serve it up to Torment. Go over to the tab where we have our SSH session to Torment. And I'm going to change to the var www.html file in Torment. And then wget, specify that IP address of Kali Linux, port 9999, and revshell.php. There we go. Now we have that file here. Now let's hop back over to this tab. We can kill our simple HTTP server. And I'm going to start netcat, so nc-nlvp. We had port 4448 specified in the reverse shell payload, so we're going to do that. And now we're going to go back to Torment, and we're going to reboot. So sudo-bin systemctl reboot. We're going to be kicked out of our SSH session, of course, so we got to wait a little bit. Wait till it reboots and try to initiate that reverse shell that we put in the web root of Torment. The reboot has taken place. I have a web browser open, and I have this tab here with netcat running. So all we have to do is access Torment over a web browser and specify the name of the file, revshell.php. There we go. So we have access to that user, QIU. Now let's see if we have any sudo permissions on that. Okay, we have sudo permissions to Python. That's going to be really easy. So I'm going to show you how we're going to go ahead and elevate our privileges to root. A lot of you may have already figured this out, but all we're going to have to do is run our common Python code that we usually use for TTY shell upgrades with sudo in front of it. That should give us a root shell right off the bat. There we go. All right. There's our flag. Excellent. We're all done here. On to the next one.